All right, let's dive into a question that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, but it's actually rooted in a really fascinating new way of looking at physics. What if everything you see around you, everything you are, isn't a bunch of separate pieces, but just different shapes of one single thing? Let's explore this idea together. So this is it. This is the big question we're tackling today. Just look around you for a second. You see your screen, a desk, maybe your own hands. It all seems totally separate, right? But what if that separation is just an illusion? What if it's all just a matter of perspective? Okay, so before we get too wild, let's ground ourselves in the world that we all know and experience every single day. This is our familiar, common sense picture of how the universe works. You can think of it kind of like a giant cosmic play. Space-time is the stage. And all the stuff, galaxies, stars, planets, you, me, all the tiny particles that make us up, we're all just actors moving around on that stage. We interact, we bump into each other, but at the end of the day, we're all fundamentally separate things. And honestly, this is the basis for most of our modern physics. But here's the thing. As we've looked closer and closer at how the universe really operates, some cracks have started to show up in that simple picture. It seems like there are these deep, underlying rules governing everything, and they lead to some really, really profound questions. Yeah, these are the non-negotiables, the cosmic speed limits. The speed of light, c, is always the same no matter what. You've got Planck's constant running the quantum world, the gravitational constant telling gravity what to do. We've built our entire understanding of reality on the idea that these numbers are fundamental, that they're just baked into the fabric of the universe. But this is where things get really interesting. This new idea challenges that head-on. It suggests that any theory that relies on these constants isn't actually describing reality directly. No, it's only describing what reality looks like from our limited point of view. It's a derived perspective. So this brings up a really crucial difference. Are these constants structural or behavioral? Okay, what does that mean? Well, a structural property is what something is. A table is made of wood. That's its structure. A behavioral property is what it does. The table supports weight. That's its behavior. So the question is the speed of light part of the universe's basic structure, like the wood? Or is it just a behavior that we happen to observe, something that emerges from a much deeper structure we can't see? All right, so if our normal view of the universe is just a derived perspective, then what is the real deal? What's the more fundamental reality? Well, this paradigm proposes a pretty dramatic simplification. It says we can get rid of all the complexity of how different objects relate to each other in one very elegant swoop. How? By proposing there's only one single object. That's it. As the source material says, we can eliminate relations between objects when there is only one single object. I mean, it makes sense, right? No more complicated interactions, no more separate actors on a stage. There's just one thing, changing its shape. And this single object has a name, Cspace. This is our new foundation. It's a single universe-spanning object. But check out its properties, because they're kind of the opposite of what we're used to. It has variable elasticity, not the rigid, constant speed of light we see, and a rigid time dimension, which is the exact opposite of the flexible, bendy time we talk about in space-time. Okay, so let's pause. If everything is just this one giant thing called Cspace, how on earth do we get the rich, complex universe we actually live in? The one full of seemingly separate objects. How do we get from a single, unified one back to the many that we see all around us? This is the key. This is the analogy that makes it all click. Imagine a single, infinite ocean. Now, that ocean can have waves, it can have currents, whirlpools, even giant icebergs. They all look like their own separate, distinct things, right? But they're not. They're all just water, H2O. They're all just the ocean reshaping itself into different forms. So here's the breakdown of how it works. First, you start with the foundation, the ocean, Cspace. Second, that ocean starts to move, creating complex shapes. These are our waves and currents. Third, and this is the wild part, one of those waves becomes so incredibly complex, it forms a local awareness, an observer, like us. And fourth, from the perspective of that wave, all the other waves look like totally separate objects moving through what it perceives as local space and time. And this really gets to the heart of the whole idea. From our perspective, as one of those waves, we see other separate waves. But if you could get a bird's eye view from the fundamental perspective of space itself, you'd see it's all just one continuous, connected thing. The separation is an illusion of perspective. So, what exactly is a wave in this sea space ocean? Well, literally everything. An observer, what's called a local awareness, that's a wave. The particles and matter we see all around us, those are just other kinds of waves. And get this, space-time itself, the very stage we thought everything was happening on, is also just an emergent property. It's a local experience created by the interaction of these waves. Incredible. This whole idea sets up this really fascinating duality, right? We have the world as we experience it, and the world as it might fundamentally be. So let's actually put them side by side and see the difference. So on the left, you've got our familiar derived view, space-time. It's packed with tons of separate things, it's ruled by a constant speed of light, and it has a flexible time that can stretch and warp. But on the right, you have the proposed fundamental view, sea space. It's one single object with a variable elasticity and a totally rigid, unchanging dimension of time. Our entire reality is just what happens when you view the right column from a very limited perspective inside of it. So, after this whole journey from our everyday universe all the way down to this pretty radical new idea, what's the big takeaway? What does it really mean to see the universe in this way? This is the heart of it, right here. We shift from thinking about a universe that's like a giant pool table with countless billiard balls bouncing off each other, to a universe that's more like a single massive body of water. And everything we see, everything that happens, is just the intricate, beautiful dance of its currents and waves. It's a fundamental shift from interaction to transformation. And that, of course, brings us to the final, really provocative thought. If everything, matter, energy, space, and time as we know it, is just a feature, a shape on the surface of this one fundamental thing, then what does that make you? Are you really just an actor on the stage, or are you yourself a ripple in the very ocean of reality? Definitely something to think about.